Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Meagan and Todd Talk D&D, and today we're going to be talking about spell flavoring.
Yeah, that's right. This is something that I encourage my players to do, and it's a really great way to make your combat more memorable and more imaginative.
And just make it your own.
Yeah, and this is something I've tended to do for when I play. I play a trickery domain cleric, and I always thought it'd be funny if, like, when they lied, because clerics have so many spells that are verbal. Really, their way of healing is like, cure wounds is me just lying. No, you're actually fine, and then your wounds actually heal up because you're this cleric of trickery.
Right, it's like a placebo effect.
Right, or I like to take inflict wounds. And when I cast that, I create like a shadowy dagger. And so when I'm doing this touch attack, it's actually in the form of a dagger, because I think that's a lot cooler than wounds just appear on somebody. I think that's kind of gross also.
Right.
But you do this a lot.
Yes.
As a player.
Yeah.
You like to flavor your spells.
Yeah. I was actually quite new to D&D when I realized that there were spell components for grease. And that's how that grease emoji came about, because I started flavoring the grease spell with butter.
Right.
I noticed that there was a bit of pork rind and butter in the grease spell, so I reached into my satchel for a stick of butter and I poured it into my dragon head staff and just kind of used it as a baseball bat to fling butter at my enemy, which knocks them prone. It's not the most powerful spell, but it sure does make it fun.
You also played an Artillerist, and the funny thing about Artillerists is they are they're strong, they're great, but they're not going to beat out a wizard.
Yes.
Right?
I played both an alchemist and an artillerist, and I thought it was a lot of fun. And I think the Artificer is one of the most complex, most fun classes in the game, but I really find myself enjoying being a glass cannon.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed the aesthetic of an Artificer. Obviously, I really like my goggles. I like the cannon, so I was thinking, how could I flavor my wizard to be more like my Artificer that's non-consequential to the game and doesn't make it difficult for your DM. So I actually used a blunderbuss as my spell focus weapon as a wizard. So for instance, you can cast magic missile through your blunderbuss.
Yeah, so you took an evocation wizard who is now using a blunderbuss as their spell focus.
Yeah.
And now all the spells are basically transmitted instead of through like a wand or a staff or any of that. It's all coming from a gun. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. And now you are like the most powerful cannon-wielding, vampire gnome.
My character is really all over the place. You really cannot tell who she is just by looking at her, because she has a long black billowing cape. She's got goggles. She carries a blunderbuss, but she's a magic user. It's kind of fun confusing people.
But that's perfect for an evocation wizard to, that would just make sense, right? To have like lightning bolt and fireball and all this to come out of a cannon is really fun, and it's a really great way to play a wizard in a different way. And there are all kinds of different ways I've seen people flavor different parts of a magic user in D&D, where you have all of your spells. I used to have a character that had a shield, and their spells were written on the inside of it like a cheat sheet. That's how they would do it. There's just a lot of really fantastic ways to add something, and they talk about this in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. And they illustrate it very well with a piece of art with a wizard farmer who I believe is a gnome or a halfling. And they are shooting magic missile, but instead of the standard magic missiles, you're actually getting chickens that are just shooting out as magic missile. And that is what the creators of D&D are trying to express to you, the player, is that this is how far you can go. Now, will your party and your DM necessarily want magic missiles that look like chickens? Maybe not. But this is the extent they want you to use your imagination. You're really great about this because you pay attention to spell components, which I never did. And it always made me laugh when you cast spells, like Fireball takes back 1-0. Like,
Yeah, so Fireball is really fun because your two spell components are bat guano and sulfur. So I think most recently I made a mixture of bat guano and sulfur and formed it into the shape of marshmallow, and just kind of blew stinky fire at mind flayers. But then also I flavored that with spell sculpt.
so you are using an evocation wizard ability called spell sculpt in a very particular way.
Yeah, so it's great having spell sculpt because when you have these area of effects spells, you can make sure that your friends do not get hurt in the process. So with Fireball, which is a great spell, I cast that on a group of mind flayers, but my friends were close by. So I, ran up to them and moved each person out of the way and just kind of flavored it a little bit like, hey, maybe your ear hair singes a little bit as this fireball moves past your head. So there's a lot of things you can do with spell sculpt. You don't have to just say, okay, my friends don't get hurt. You can do anything you want with that. You could, I don't know, move yourself, you can move your friends.
And mechanically, this it doesn't really change anything. So when you're saying
It's totally inconsequential.
yeah, so you're not actually physically moving them. You're just like basically pushing the fireball away from them.
Yes.
In terms of like being on a grid, being on a map or something, you're not actually physically moving these characters around. And that's the whole point of flavoring things is that you're not indicating something like a spell that it isn't, and you're not mechanically changing anything. So the way
Right.
that what I like about what you do with spell sculpt is you could either be pushing the fireball away from someone, or as the fireball is flowing past everything, you're just like grabbing a friend and putting them back.
Yes.
Because you're already such a speedster character, that makes a lot of sense. If you're in range of that spell, and that's like one of my favorite ways to imagine combat, and I think it's extremely memorable. Are there any other ways you like to flavor spells?
Oh, yeah. So Invisibility is another one of my favorite ones. It is a touch spell, so I really like to create invisibility gum. And one of the other, or the two components in that spell are an eyelash and gum Arabic. So I, as a character, take an eyelash and put it in a piece of gum and create a pack of gum sticks for my friends. If I sense they're in danger, I just hand them one. As long as they're within range of me and I touch them when they take it.
Yeah, and you cast that spell at that
Yeah.
moment. It's again, this is just flavor.
Yeah.
Now there are some weird cases where you can mechanically change spells, and one of the things a sorcerer can do now because of Tasha's Cauldron of Everything is they have a meta magic feature that allows them to change the damage type to another elemental version. So if they cast Fireball, they can cast basically a fireball that does ice damage, cold damage.
Yeah.
They can cast a lightning bolt that does fire damage. So there are like more options to flavoring that. Like, what does a fireball look like that does cold damage? Right? There's some very interesting things to do there.
Yeah.
The Order of Scribes Wizard is interesting because if you have in your spell book another spell of a particular damage type of the same level as another spell, say Fireball, you can change that damage type to whatever you want as long as you own a spell in that spell slot of the same level. And so that means you could like maybe cast a lightning bolt that does magical piercing damage, which is terrifying. And the reason I got interested in this is you can do this at almost every single level. For the Order of Scribes Wizards, you can change almost every spell into either force damage, bludgeoning damage, piercing, or slashing. And you can play this kind of Magneto-like character that is taking like real-world items and just doing piercing and bludgeoning damage. Which, like a fireball that's doing bludgeoning damage is so creepy to me. Because it implies like there's this massive gravity push, right?
The physics are totally different.
Yeah, and so you can flavor spells that way. You are changing them mechanically as that particular class, but then you can add another spin on it as well, and it becomes very fun and challenging. Especially if you've been playing a long time, or if you're just new to the game and you want something to feel like you.
Right.
Is there anything else in particular that you like to do when you flavor spells?
Another one that I really like is Acid Arrow. The two spell components for that one are Rhubarb and Adder's Stomach. this one's a little gruesome. So I think I flavored it as stretching an intestine from one end of the bow to the other to replace the bowstring.
Right.
Because of those components. And a lot of the times when I am flavoring these or role-playing game, people are like, "Ew, why did you choose to do that?" But it's right there.
Well, a lot of them are in-jokes about the origin of the spell itself. Like, for Fireball, it being backguano and sulfur, these are the ingredients for gunpowder. And you'll find this quite a bit in a lot of spells that that this is a hint at something almost scientifically, accurate. Not quite, obviously not. But yeah, there are a few in-jokes in D&D in terms of what the spell components are now.
So I saved this one for last because it doesn't actually use spell components because it is a cantrip and it is called Acid Splash. But I still feel like there's a lot you can do to flavor this one. And the way that I flavored it was like, my character, Sophias, would lift a glass jar full of putrid, rotten green mayonnaise, and she lifts a circular utensil from it and blows an acid bubble, and as it turns, it drips on the ground, burning any surface it touches as it reaches my enemy's face and singes them.
Which takes an already nasty cantrip and makes it so much worse.
I think those were in the days when I was using the alchemy jug, which has quite a bit of mayonnaise. I forgot.
Right.
That might have influenced that one a little bit.
More mayonnaise than there should be in D&D.
How many gallons of mayonnaise was it?
Any amount is too much. Yeah.
It's a McDonald's chicken sandwich amount of mayonnaise.
It's disgusting. It's just awful. I hate the alchemy jug for having mayonnaise in it.
It's a love-hate relationship.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how you can basically do anything, and we've seen other examples of this, like not only using a cannon to cast your spells. We saw a great GIF where someone was a wizard that was just shooting everything out of a bow. You can get that flavor as long as it's not mechanically changing anything. It hurts no one, and it's super fun. And again, you will remember combat so much better, and it makes everything so much more exciting around the table.
And you can make it your own. You are not getting any advantage over this except for it just being a memorable time and having fun with your friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe grossing out a few of them.
That is also true. You do gross people out with your spellcasting quite a bit.
And they still stick around, so.
Yeah, and yet they still come back. And they're still your friends. So.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us on another episode of Meagan and Todd Talk D&D. Let us know if you use any of these spell flavors and how you enjoyed them, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you want to support more videos like this, you can go to our Patreon as well. Thank you so much for watching.